$2,000 wine glass shattered against marble as Arya Sinclair's world exploded into chaos. Just 30 minutes earlier, she'd been mocking the black man across from her, calling him just security. Now he was the only thing standing between her and 3 armed men who'd come to collect the ultimate ransom. Blood trickled down her temple as Damon Carter moved with lethal precision, his body a weapon she'd completely underestimated. The designer heels she'd worn to intimidate him now betrayed her as she stumbled behind overturned tables, watching this man she'd dismissed transform into something that made her breath catch, not from fear of him, but from the realization that she'd been catastrophically wrong about everything. But let's rewind to where it all began. 30 minutes before Arya Sinclair learned the most expensive lesson of her life. The rooftop restaurant Celestial buzzed with Manhattan's elite, crystal chandeliers catching the golden hour light 40 stories above the city. Arya adjusted her Hermes watch, a nervous habit she'd never admit to, and surveyed her kingdom. Every table held someone she either knew, employed, or had crushed in business. This was her territory, her element, her stage for what she expected would be a very brief and very boring obligation. Maya, her childhood friend turned social justice attorney, had been relentless about this setup. You need perspective, Arya. You need to remember there's a world beyond boardrooms and hostile takeovers. What Maya didn't understand was that Arya had built those walls for a reason. The last time she'd let someone past her defenses, a charming economics major named Jerome who'd sweet-talked his way into her trust fund, she'd lost $2 million and learned that vulnerability was just another word for stupid. Her phone buzzed with a text. He's walking in now. Black guy, tall, confident. Be nice, Arya. For once, just be human. Arya's jaw tightened. Maya knew her history with Jerome, knew exactly why she'd sworn off dating entirely, especially black men who might see her wealth as an opportunity. But Maya was convinced this security consultant was different, special somehow. Security consultant. Arya almost laughed. Probably worked mall security or bounced at nightclubs. Maya's bleeding heart always got the better of her judgment. She spotted him immediately, 6'2", moving through the restaurant with a presence that made other diners glance up. Well-built, wearing a navy blazer that was nice but definitely not designer. His skin was the deep brown of expensive coffee, his movements controlled and purposeful. Handsome, she'd give him that. But handsome was dangerous. Jerome had been handsome too. As he approached her corner table, she always chose corner tables for the psychological advantage. Arya felt her defensive mechanisms activate. The smile that had closed billion-dollar deals, sharp enough to cut glass. The posture that said, I own this room and everyone in it. The invisible crown that reminded the world exactly who they were dealing with. Arya? His voice was deeper than she'd expected, with the faintest trace of an accent she couldn't place. Not East Coast educated like her circle. I'm Damon Carter. She remained seated, forcing him to hover awkwardly while she made her visual assessment. Calloused hands, manual labor. Shoes were polished but not Italian leather. Watch was nice but nothing she recognized as luxury. Everything about him screamed working class, trying to dress up. Exactly what she'd feared. So you're Maya's security friend. She gestured vaguely at the chair across from her, finally allowing him to sit. I have to say, when she mentioned you worked in security, I was hoping for someone more. Executive level. Loss prevention for major corporations, maybe private consulting for Fortune 500 companies. Damon settled into his chair with fluid grace, his eyes doing something she didn't recognize, scanning the room in a pattern that seemed almost methodical. Security covers a lot of ground, he said simply. I'm sure it does. Her laugh held no warmth. Airport bag checks, mall patrol, nightclub doors. Honest work, I suppose, though I wouldn't know. My world runs on complexity you probably can't comprehend. Quarterly projections, international acquisitions, board meetings, where billion-dollar decisions get made in minutes. She watched for the flinch, the shrinking that usually happened when she established dominance. Instead, Damon's expression remained neutral, almost clinical, like he was studying her rather than intimidating by her. The thought annoyed her more than she expected. Must be stressful, he said, still scanning the restaurant. All that responsibility. All those people depending on your judgment. Was that sarcasm? She couldn't tell, which irritated her further. Men usually either cowered or got aggressive when she flexed her success. This calm assessment was new territory. It's the price of excellence. She signaled the sommelier with the imperious wave that had become second nature. I suppose when your job involves checking IDs or walking people to their cars, the intellectual stimulation plateaus rather quickly. What do you think about during those long shifts? Sports scores? What to watch on television? The sommelier appeared instantly. Money commanded that kind of attention. The Chateau Margaux 2010, she ordered without looking at the wine list. $800 a bottle. Let him choke on that. Damon's attention split between her and something else, his gaze moving systematically across the restaurant. Yesterday, I thought about fluid dynamics, he said evenly. How systems under pressure behave when one component fails. Also thought about my daughter's robotics project. She's building an autonomous vehicle that can navigate obstacles. Your daughter. The words hit differently than she expected. A child meant responsibility, meant someone depending on him, meant complications she hadn't factored into her need assessment. How wonderful. Her tone could have frosted the windows. Single father juggling security work and parenthood. That must be challenging on a rent-a-cop salary. The wine arrived with ceremonial fanfare, the sommelier going through the tasting ritual for her approval. She barely glanced at it, more interested in watching Damon's reaction to the casual cruelty of her comment. Still nothing. If anything, he seemed more focused on cataloging the positions of other diners than engaging with her deliberate insults. Your table at 2 o'clock, he said quietly, his voice carrying new authority. 3 men. They arrived separately, but they're coordinating movements. The one by the window keeps checking his phone. All 3 positioned to control sight lines and exits. Arya followed his gaze, confused. 3 ordinary-looking men at separate tables, eating dinner like everyone else. Are you having some kind of episode? They're just having dinner. No. His eyes met hers, and she saw something that made her stomach flutter. Not attraction, but recognition of danger in its purest form. They're watching you. Have been since I sat down. Professional positioning, concealed carry, coordinated timing. He leaned forward slightly. Arya, we need to leave. Right now. She laughed, bright and cutting. Oh, this is rich. The security guard thinks he's spotted some conspiracy. What's next? Are they going to rappel through the windows? This is Manhattan, not some action movie. People look around restaurants. It's called dining. But something in his absolute stillness, in the way he'd gone from polite dinner companion to something else entirely, made her defensive laughter sound hollow even to her own ears. But before we see how this billionaire's prejudice almost cost her everything, smash that like button if you've ever been judged by your appearance, because this story will change how you see strength forever. The Chateau Margaux sat untouched between them as Arya's mind raced back to another restaurant, 8 years ago. Columbia University's faculty club, where Jerome Williams had proposed with a ring he'd bought using her own credit card. She'd been 24, heir to a tech fortune, but still naive enough to believe love conquered calculation. 3 months later, she discovered the engagement was performance art. Jerome had been systematically draining her accounts, using her trust fund as his personal ATM while spinning stories about investment opportunities and temporary cash flow issues. The humiliation hadn't been the money. $2 million was pocket change to the Sinclair family empire. The devastation had been realizing that every whispered endearment, every passionate night, every shared dream had been choreographed manipulation. She'd rebuilt herself from that ashes, transforming vulnerability into viciousness, trust into tactical advantage. Never again would anyone see her as a mark, a target, a naive little rich girl ripe for exploitation. That transformation had served her well. By 28, she'd wrested control of SyncTech from her father's aging grip, pivoting the company from basic cybersecurity into cutting-edge artificial intelligence. Her ruthless efficiency became legendary. She'd fire entire departments without blinking, acquire competitors with surgical precision, and negotiate deals that left seasoned executives questioning their career choices. The tech world learned to fear Arya Sinclair's smile the same way ancient sailors feared calm seas. Her penthouse became her fortress, 40 floors above the masses who might want something from her. She ate breakfast alone at a 12-foot marble table, her reflection multiplied in polished surfaces until she couldn't distinguish the original from the copies. Perfect metaphor for her life. Successful, beautiful, and completely artificial. Across from her now, Damon continued his systematic surveillance of the restaurant, his attention divided between her conversation and threat assessment. What she interpreted as disrespect or boredom was actually operational discipline honed through years of keeping high-value targets alive. 8 months ago, he'd been Sergeant Major Damon Carter, Delta Force Operational Detachment Alpha, specializing in close protection and counterterrorism operations. His last mission, extracting a kidnapped diplomat from Mogadishu, had gone perfectly until the politician decided to hold a press conference about his heroic rescue. The media attention had burned Damon's cover, forcing early retirement from active duty. Now, he worked private security for clients who required discretion above all else. Fortune 500 CEOs visiting hostile territories, federal judges receiving credible death threats, tech innovators whose breakthrough patents made them kidnapping targets. The NDAs he'd signed were thicker than phone books, binding him to silence about clients, methods, and capabilities. He couldn't tell dates where he worked, couldn't discuss his specialized training, couldn't even mention the languages he spoke fluently or the medical certifications he maintained. Most people assumed security consultant meant glorified bodyguard. They had no idea he'd spent 6 years learning to kill with everything from surgical instruments to office supplies, that he could perform battlefield surgery or negotiate hostage releases in 4 languages. His job required invisibility. Clients paid premium rates for protection that looked effortless, threats neutralized before they materialized. The irony wasn't lost on him. He'd spent years protecting people who looked exactly like Arya, wealthy, entitled, convinced their money made them superior to working-class operators like him. But those same clients trusted him with their lives when danger materialized, when privilege became liability and survival required skills that couldn't be purchased. His phone buzzed with a text from his daughter. "Dad, my robot beat Tommy's in practice today. Can't wait to show you the new algorithm I wrote. Love you to Saturn and back. Skylar." 8 years old and already coding circles around high school students. Her science teacher had called her gifted beyond conventional measurement, but Damon knew better. She wasn't gifted. She was driven. Every night after homework, she'd curl up beside him on their secondhand couch, laptop balanced on her knees, debugging code while he reviewed security protocols. Their evening routine, her explaining programming concepts, him helping with math problems that challenged adults. She was his anchor, his purpose, his reason for choosing stable private contracts over lucrative but dangerous overseas deployments. Military pension plus security consulting provided enough for her specialized tutoring, advanced science camps, and the college fund he'd started the day she was born. Every decision filtered through one question: what serves Skylar best? Tonight, she was at aftercare with Mrs. Rodriguez, probably teaching other kids basic programming, while she waited for pickup. He'd promised to help her calibrate sensor arrays for tomorrow's robotics competition. Simple evening plans that mattered more than any mission he'd ever completed. Across the table, Arya continued her verbal dissection, each comment designed to establish dominance through humiliation. "I'm curious, when you're standing outside nightclubs checking IDs, do you ever wonder what it's like inside? The kind of connections that get made, the deals that happen over drinks worth more than your weekly salary?" 3 tables away, the man by the window received another text. His hand moved instinctively toward his jacket, muscle memory that Damon recognized from countless threat assessments. These weren't ordinary diners. The coordination was too precise, the positioning too strategic. Someone had done advanced work, learned Arya's patterns, chosen this location for specific tactical advantages. "The deals that matter most," Damon said quietly, eyes tracking the subtle hand signals between suspects, "happen when people think nobody's watching." Comment below, have you ever had someone make assumptions about you based on how you look or what you do? Because Damon was about to show everyone what real strength looks like. Arya's patience had officially expired. This man, this security guard, pretending to see threats in ordinary diners, was wasting her time with paranoid fantasies while her real world demanded attention. Her phone showed 17 missed calls from her CFO about the Tokyo merger, 3 texts from board members, and a Bloomberg alert about market fluctuations that could cost her millions if she didn't respond soon. "Let me explain something to you, Damon." She leaned forward, her voice dropping to the tone that had made grown executives weep. "While you're inventing conspiracy theories about businessmen having dinner, I'm managing a company that moves $2 billion through global markets daily. My decisions affect thousands of jobs, international supply chains, technological innovation that shapes the future. Your world," she gestured dismissively, "involves checking IDs and walking people to parking garages." The sommelier refilled her untouched wine, clearly uncomfortable with the tension radiating from their table. Arya barely noticed, her focus laser-sharp on demolishing this man's presumption that he could understand her reality. "Do you know what I do when I wake up at 4 a.m.? I analyze market trends across 16 countries while you're probably setting alarm clocks to unlock buildings for people who actually matter. My breakfast meetings negotiate deals worth more than you'll earn in your lifetime. My afternoon conference calls determine whether entire industries succeed or fail." Damon's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, but his eyes never stopped their methodical sweep of the room. Target 1, window position, had shifted his chair for better sightlines to their table. Target 2, northwest corner, kept checking his watch with military precision. Target 3, entrance position, had barely touched his food despite ordering 30 minutes ago. "You live in a bubble," Arya continued, her voice gaining vicious momentum. "A simple world where problems have obvious solutions, where good guys and bad guys wear labels, where complexity means deciding which uniform to wear. Must be liberating, having such uncomplicated responsibilities. No quarterly projections keeping you awake. No board meetings where failure means thousands of layoffs. No hostile takeovers requiring strategies you'd never comprehend." She paused to sip wine that tasted like liquid gold and satisfaction. "I envy that simplicity, honestly. Some people are built for greatness, others for service. There's no shame in knowing your place." The cruelty hit its mark. For the first time since sitting down, Damon's full attention focused on her, and the intensity of his gaze made her breath catch. Not anger, something colder, more analytical, like she'd revealed classified information without realizing it. "You're right," he said softly. "My world is simple: threat assessment, risk mitigation, keeping people alive." His voice carried new authority that cut through her superiority like a blade through silk. "Right now, my simple brain is processing 17 indicators that you're in immediate danger, and your complicated intelligence is too busy proving your superiority to notice." Target 1 had palmed something metallic from his jacket, blade or small firearm. Target 2 was texting rapidly while maintaining visual contact with their table. Target 3 had abandoned all pretense of eating, his attention locked on Arya with predatory focus. "This is what paranoia looks like," she laughed, but the sound felt hollow in her throat. "Creating drama where none exists. Maybe nightclub security requires this level of hypervigilance, but civilized society operates differently." "Civilized society," Damon repeated, his tone flat as concrete. "The same society where billionaire tech founders get kidnapped for ransom? Where executives become targets for everyone from foreign operatives to domestic terrorists? Where your success makes you a walking prize worth killing for?" The precision of his assessment sent an unexpected chill through her system. These weren't random observations. They were specific, professional, informed by knowledge she hadn't expected from a simple security worker. "You don't understand the complexity," she began. "Complexity?" His interruption was surgical. "Like how Target 1 moved his chair 45 degrees after you ordered wine, giving him clear shooting lanes to our table? Or how Target 2 has received 6 texts in 12 minutes, all from the same number, probably coordination updates? Or how Target 3 chose the entrance position specifically to control egress routes?" Arya's wine glass froze halfway to her lips. The clinical precision of his terminology, the tactical language, the systematic way he'd been cataloging positions. This wasn't security guard paranoia. This was something else entirely. Target 1 just signaled. Damon continued, his voice dropping to barely audible levels. Hand gesture, subtle but clear. Target 2 acknowledged with a head nod. Target 3 is moving his jacket aside for weapon access. His eyes locked on hers with devastating intensity. This is happening now. Whatever you think you know about me, whatever assumptions you've made, set them aside. Your life depends on it. The absolute certainty in his voice, the transformation from mild-mannered dinner companion to something that radiated lethal competence, finally penetrated her wall of arrogance. For the first time in 8 years, Arya Sinclair felt genuinely afraid. "What are you talking about?" Her voice came out smaller than intended. "Professional kidnapping, probably ransom-based, possibly foreign intelligence, definitely well-funded and carefully planned." He was already moving, his body subtly repositioning between her and the identified threats. "They know your schedule, your patterns, your preferred locations. This wasn't random, you were specifically targeted." The restaurant's ambient lighting suddenly felt harsh, revealing details she'd missed in her self-absorbed superiority. The three men weren't trying to blend in anymore. Their coordinated movements, the way they'd positioned themselves for tactical advantage, the professional precision of their surveillance, it all crystallized into terrifying clarity. "We're leaving," Damon said, his hand moving to his jacket with practiced efficiency. "Move to the kitchen entrance. Stay low, stay quiet. Follow my lead exactly." "This is insane." But even as she protested, Arya's primitive survival instincts were screaming that this man she'd spent 2 hours mocking, might be the only thing standing between her and catastrophe. "Insane is sitting here debating while professional killers position for attack." His hand found her wrist with gentle but implacable pressure. "Trust me or die. Those are your options." The lights went out. Emergency lighting kicked in immediately, bathing the restaurant in hellish red shadows as screams erupted from multiple directions. In the chaos of darkness and panic, 3 figures moved with coordinated precision toward their table, weapons appearing in hands that knew exactly how to use them. "Down!" Damon's command cut through the mayhem as his body transformed into something that belonged in war zones, not wine tastings. The mild-mannered security consultant vanished, replaced by a predator whose training had been earned in places where hesitation meant death. Arya's world exploded into violence that made her billion-dollar hostile takeovers look like code playground games. This was real power, the kind that couldn't be bought, couldn't be negotiated, couldn't be manipulated through board meetings or market strategies. This was survival in its purest form, and the man she'd dismissed as intellectually inferior was about to become her entire universe. And that's when Arya realized her biggest mistake. If this video is keeping you on edge, hit subscribe because we're just getting to the incredible part. The transformation was instantaneous and terrifying. One moment, Damon Carter was a mild-mannered security consultant sitting politely through verbal abuse. The next, he moved like liquid death itself. Every motion economy of violence honed through years of combat in places most people couldn't pronounce. His left hand swept the heavy crystal wine decanter off their table in a fluid arc, catching target 1, the window position, across the temple with surgical precision. The man dropped like a marionette with severed strings, his drawn Sig Sauer skittering across marble floors as 200 pounds of trained muscle collapsed unconsciously into a potted palm. "Kitchen. Now." Damon's voice carried absolute authority as he hauled Arya from her chair, his right hand producing a tactical pen that looked innocuous until she saw how he held it, like a blade, like something designed to end lives efficiently. "Stay behind me. Do exactly what I say when I say it." Arya's designer heels betrayed her immediately, sending her stumbling across polished floors as chaos erupted throughout the restaurant. Panicked diners screamed and scattered, overturning tables and chairs in their desperate flight toward exits that Target 2 and Target 3 had already moved to control. Without hesitation, Damon scooped her up, one arm around her waist, carrying her like she weighed nothing while maintaining defensive positioning with movements so fluid they looked rehearsed. This wasn't improvisation. This was muscle memory carved into bone through thousands of hours of close protection training. Target 2 emerged from behind the overturned server station, Glock 19 raised in professional two-handed grip, muzzle tracking toward Arya with lethal intent. Damon's response was immediate and devastating. He launched the crystal decanter in a perfect arc while simultaneously throwing Arya behind the granite bar counter, his body following to shield her from incoming fire. The gunman's shot went wide as heavy crystal exploded against his shooting hand, breaking bones and sending his weapon spinning away. But Delta Force training had taught Damon that wounded enemies were often more dangerous than healthy ones. And Target 2 proved the lesson by producing a backup piece from an ankle holster. Moving with inhuman speed, Damon vaulted the bar counter, using its marble surface as a launching platform. His tactical pen found the nerve cluster just below Target 2's ear, a pressure point that shut down motor function instantly. The man collapsed, paralyzed but conscious, his weapon clattering uselessly beyond reach. Carotid compression hold, Damon explained to Arya's horrified stare, his voice calm as a medical instructor's. Temporary paralysis, no permanent damage. He'll recover full function in 12 to 15 minutes. Arya pressed herself against the bar's base, her $3,000 dress torn and stained, watching this man she dismissed as intellectually inferior demonstrate combat skills that belonged in action films, not real life. Every movement was purposeful, economical, devastatingly effective. This wasn't violence. This was artistry applied to survival. Target 3 had flanked them during the engagement, moving through the kitchen with professional silence. But Damon had anticipated the maneuver, positioning himself to monitor multiple approach vectors while protecting his principal, a term Arya was beginning to understand meant her. "Suppressed weapon," he murmured, recognizing the distinctive whisper of silenced gunfire from the kitchen. "Professional-grade equipment. This isn't street crime, Arya. This is contracted work." The realization hit her like cold water. Someone had paid for her kidnapping, planned it meticulously, hired operatives with military-grade training and equipment. Her wealth hadn't just made her successful. It had made her a target worth millions to the right buyers. Target 3 appeared at the kitchen entrance, weapon raised, professional stance revealing extensive training. But he'd made one crucial error. He'd underestimated his opposition. To him, Damon looked like private security, maybe former police, certainly not Delta Force tier. The engagement lasted 3 seconds. Damon used the restaurant's architecture like terrain, bouncing off surfaces to change attack vectors faster than human reflexes could track. A thrown champagne flute shattered against Target 3's night vision goggles, temporarily blinding him. A sliding tackle behind the knees sent him crashing into industrial kitchen equipment. The silenced pistol discharged harmlessly into overhead ventilation as Damon applied a blood choke that dropped the operative into unconsciousness within seconds. "Sleeper hold," he explained, checking Target 3's pulse with medical precision. "Cuts blood flow to brain, induces unconsciousness without permanent injury. Standard non-lethal takedown for close protection work." Arya stared at him with growing comprehension. The clinical terminology, the precise application of force, the systematic way he'd neutralized 3 armed professionals without killing anyone. This wasn't security guard training. This was something entirely different. "You're bleeding." His attention had shifted to her, and she looked down to see crimson spreading across her forearm where broken glass had found flesh. The cut was deeper than she'd realized, adrenaline having masked the pain. What happened next shattered every assumption she'd made about this man's capabilities. From his jacket, Damon produced a compact medical kit that contained more equipment than most ambulances. His hands moved with surgical precision, cleaning the wound with antiseptic, applying pressure bandages with the skill of someone who'd performed battlefield medicine under fire. "Pressure point compression to control bleeding," he explained, his touch gentle despite hands that had just disabled 3 armed attackers. "The cut missed major vessels, but it needs proper cleaning to prevent infection. You'll want stitches within the next hour." Police sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer with each second. Damon was already moving, securing weapons, checking the unconscious operatives for identification, photographing everything with the methodical efficiency of someone who understood evidence preservation. "No wallets, no identification, no personal items," he reported, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to briefing superiors. Professional-grade equipment, coordinated tactics, specific targeting. This was contracted work, probably international. Definitely well-funded. He knelt beside her, his eyes, those same eyes she'd dismissed as belonging to someone intellectually inferior, now revealing depths of intelligence and experience that made her feel small and naive. Arya, listen carefully. These men didn't choose you randomly. Someone paid substantial money for your kidnapping. They knew your location, your schedule, your patterns. This level of intelligence gathering suggests long-term surveillance and significant resources. The magnitude of her vulnerability crashed over her like a tsunami. Her penthouse fortress, her corporate security, her billions in assets, none of it had protected her when real danger materialized. Only this man she'd spent 2 hours systematically humiliating, stood between her and catastrophe. Why? The question came out as a whisper. Why would someone? Your technology patents alone are worth billions to foreign governments, Damon said, his analysis clinical and thorough. Your AI research could revolutionize warfare, surveillance, cyber operations. Kidnapping you for ransom would be profitable, but stealing your intellectual property would be transformational. Police burst through the restaurant's entrance, weapons drawn, shouting commands that echoed off marble surfaces. Damon immediately assumed a non-threatening position, hands visible, body language submissive, making himself look like a victim rather than a threat. But Arya saw the truth now, the way he positioned himself to monitor entry points while appearing compliant. How he'd memorized badge numbers and faces before the officers fully entered. The subtle hand signals he made that she didn't recognize, but that clearly communicated tactical information to responding units. This wasn't just survival instinct. This was professional expertise applied to protection work at the highest levels. "Ma'am, are you injured?" A paramedic had appeared beside them, medical bag already open, hands moving to assess her wounds. But Arya couldn't stop staring at Damon, at this man who'd been sitting across from her 2 hours ago while she'd mocked his simple life and uncomplicated responsibilities. He'd saved her life. Not just from immediate physical danger, but from a fate that would have been exponentially worse than death. And he'd done it with skills that revealed her assumptions had been not just wrong, but catastrophically ignorant. Can you imagine realizing the person you'd been mocking just saved your life? Drop a heart if you think Arya's about to learn the biggest lesson of her life. The ambulance bay at Mount Sinai buzzed with controlled chaos, but Arya barely noticed. She sat on a gurney while an EMT finished stitching her forearm, her mind replaying every cruel word she'd spoken over the past 2 hours. Each memory felt like swallowing glass. The casual dismissal, the intellectual superiority, the assumption that manual labor meant mental inferiority. She'd built her entire identity around being smarter, more successful, more valuable than everyone around her. Tonight, a man she'd systematically humiliated had demonstrated capabilities that made her billions look like monopoly money. Real power, real skill, real intelligence applied to protecting human life. "I owe you an apology." The words felt inadequate, like apologizing for a hurricane with a greeting card. Several apologies, maybe a few hundred. Damon looked up from the police report he was completing with methodical precision. Even his handwriting was disciplined, clear, economical, professional. You were protecting yourself the only way you knew how. That's not an excuse. Shame burned in her throat like acid. The things I said, the assumptions I made, I was horrible. You were hurt. His assessment was clinical, compassionate, completely undeserved. Someone damaged your ability to trust, so you developed defensive mechanisms. Attack before being attacked. Establish dominance before being dominated. I recognized the pattern. The simple understanding in his voice broke something inside her chest. No anger, no resentment, no demand for apologies she couldn't adequately give. Just professional analysis that somehow felt more devastating than fury would have been. "Why didn't you tell me?" The question burst out of her like a confession. "Why didn't you explain who you really were, what you really did? You let me mock you for hours." Damon's expression shifted, revealing something she'd never learned to recognize. The exhaustion of constantly proving basic competence to people who assumed incompetence based on appearance. "Would you have believed me?" His question was gentle but pointed. If I'd claimed Delta Force experience, would you have seen evidence or bragging? If I'd mentioned tactical medicine training, would you have been impressed or assumed I was inflating mall security credentials? The truth hit like a physical blow. She would have dismissed every qualification, every achievement, every demonstration of expertise as lies or exaggeration. Her prejudice had created impermeable armor against information that contradicted her assumptions. I've learned that credentials don't change minds, he continued, his voice carrying weight of experiences she'd never considered. People see what they expect to see. A black man in security work gets categorized immediately. Uneducated, aggressive, limited potential. Explaining otherwise just makes you sound defensive or delusional. She thought about her corporate boardrooms, her exclusive social circles, her charity galas filled with Manhattan's elite. How many brilliant minds had she dismissed without consideration? How many talented people had she overlooked because they didn't fit her narrow definition of excellence? I need to pick up my daughter from aftercare. Damon glanced at his watch. 9:30 p.m., well past normal pickup times. Mrs. Rodriguez stays late for emergencies, but Skylar will be worried. Can I come? The request surprised her as much as him. I mean, if that's appropriate, I'd like to meet her. He studied her face, searching for ulterior motives or social curiosity that might harm his child. Whatever he saw must have satisfied him because he nodded slowly. Her aftercare program is in Harlem. Different world from Manhattan penthouses. I need to see different worlds, she admitted. Clearly. The drive uptown took them through neighborhoods Arya had never visited despite living in New York for 8 years. Her wealth had created geographic barriers as effective as physical walls, keeping her insulated from communities that existed 15 minutes from her corporate headquarters. Damon navigated streets with the same systematic awareness he'd shown in the restaurant, but his tension had transformed from tactical alertness to parental concern. She's brilliant, he said, speaking more to himself than her. Reading at high school level, coding better than college students, building robots that make engineers jealous. But she's also 8 years old and probably scared because Dad's 3 hours late. The Harlem Community Learning Center occupied a renovated brownstone that radiated warmth despite its modest resources. Children's artwork covered every wall, science projects filled display cases, and the smell of homemade cookies suggested this was more than institutional childcare. Skylar Carter looked up from a laptop when they entered, her face transforming with relief that made Arya's chest tighten unexpectedly. She was beautiful. Her father's intelligent eyes, skin the color of rich bronze, hair braided with colorful beads that caught the overhead lights. Daddy. She launched herself into Damon's arms with complete trust, and he caught her with the same fluid precision he'd used to disarm attackers. But this was different. Gentle, protective, suffused with love so profound it was almost painful to witness. Sorry I'm late, baby girl. Work got complicated. Mrs. Rodriguez said there was trouble at your dinner. Skylar's vocabulary was sophisticated, her concern mature beyond her years. Are you hurt? I'm fine, but I want you to meet someone special. He turned toward Arya with careful formality. This is Miss Sinclair. She's the lady I had dinner with tonight. Skylar extended her hand with polite confidence that spoke of careful parenting and high expectations. Nice to meet you, Miss Sinclair. Daddy said you work with computers like I do. The casual mention of her work made Arya realize how thoroughly she'd misunderstood this evening. Damon hadn't been intimidated by her success. He'd actually researched her company, probably read about her innovations, possibly even respected her professional achievements. She'd been so busy asserting dominance that she'd missed his genuine interest. What kind of programming do you do? She asked, settling into a child-sized chair that made her feel appropriately small. Skylar's eyes lit up with enthusiasm that reminded Arya of her own childhood passion for technology. Right now, I'm building an autonomous navigation system using Arduino microcontrollers and ultrasonic sensors. The robot has to identify obstacles and find optimal pathways without human input. The technical sophistication of the explanation made Arya blink in surprise. This 8-year-old was discussing concepts that challenged her own engineering team. That's incredibly advanced work. Daddy helps with the math, but I write all the code myself. Skylar beamed with pride that was completely justified. He says problem solving is the most important skill you can learn, whether you're building robots or protecting people. Watching them together, Skylar explaining her latest project, while Damon listened with complete attention, offering suggestions that revealed deep technical knowledge. Arya finally understood the full scope of her blindness. This wasn't just a father and daughter. This was a family unit functioning at intellectual and emotional levels that made her isolated success feel hollow. She'd spent years believing that her achievements made her superior to people like Damon. But sitting in that community center, watching a single father balance elite military skills with nurturing parenthood, while raising a daughter who might revolutionize robotics before graduating high school, Arya realized she'd been measuring worth with the wrong instruments entirely. Excellence wasn't about bank balances or board positions. It was about character, competence, and the courage to protect what mattered most. 3 days later, Arya stared at her phone for the 20th time, thumb hovering over Damon's contact information. She'd rewritten the text message 7 times, each attempt sounding either too casual, too desperate, or too much like a business proposal. Finally, she settled on brutal honesty. I'd like to try again. A real date this time. One where I actually listen instead of performing superiority. Would you consider giving me another chance? His response came 2 hours later, Saturday afternoon, Central Park Code Playground. Skylar has a robotics demonstration at the Science Pavilion. If you're serious about understanding my world, start there. Not what she'd expected, but exactly what she deserved. No romantic restaurant, no opportunity to impress with expensive wine selections or exclusive reservations. Just authentic life, a single father sharing what mattered most to him. Saturday arrived gray and drizzly, but the Science Pavilion buzzed with energy as dozens of children demonstrated projects that would have impressed MIT graduate students. Arya found them near the robotics display, where Skylar was explaining autonomous navigation principles to a fascinated crowd of adults and children. The ultrasonic sensors detect obstacles within a 2-meter radius, Skylar was saying, her small hands confidently adjusting her robot's programming interface. The algorithm calculates optimal pathways using modified Dijkstra's algorithm, but I added collision prediction protocols that account for moving objects. Damon stood behind her, pride radiating from his posture as he watched his daughter command attention through pure intellectual brilliance. He looked different in jeans and a sweater, less tactical operator, more devoted father navigating weekend responsibilities. That's incredibly sophisticated, Arya said, approaching carefully. Collision prediction is graduate-level computer science. Skylar beamed, recognizing genuine appreciation rather than condescending adult praise. Daddy helped me understand the math, but I had to figure out the coding logic myself. It's like problem-solving puzzles, except the puzzles can move around the real world. Would you show me how the sensor array communicates with the navigation system? Arya asked, settling cross-legged on the floor beside the 8-year-old genius. I work with similar concepts in cybersecurity, but your application is more elegant than anything my team has developed. For the next hour, they discussed programming concepts, debugging strategies, and optimization techniques. Arya found herself genuinely challenged by Skylar's insights, her innovative approaches to problems that had stumped experienced engineers. This child wasn't just intellectually gifted, she was a natural innovator with intuitive understanding of complex systems. Damon watched their interaction with careful assessment, his protective instincts balanced against recognition that Arya's interest was authentic. No performance, no condescension, no attempt to impress him through his daughter. Just genuine fascination with Skylar's brilliance. Ice cream? He suggested when the demonstration concluded. There's a vendor who makes liquid nitrogen gelato. Skylar likes watching the chemistry. They walked through Central Park as afternoon light filtered through autumn leaves, Skylar skipping ahead to examine interesting rocks while maintaining constant chatter about crystallization processes and temperature dynamics. Normal family rhythm that felt foreign yet appealing to Arya's structured, isolated existence. I owe you more than apologies, she said when Skylar was briefly distracted by a group of dogs. I need to own what I did, what I assumed, how I treated you. You saw what you expected to see, Damon replied, his tone neither accusatory nor dismissive. Black man, security work, calloused hands. Your brain processed that information through filters created by trauma and privilege. That's not an excuse. No, but it's explanation. Understanding why we react helps us choose different reactions. He paused, watching Skylar negotiate with dog owners for petting privileges. Your ex-boyfriend did damage, made you equate vulnerability with stupidity, trust with weakness. You built walls to protect yourself. The accuracy of his assessment made her throat constrict. I became someone I don't recognize, cruel, dismissive, convinced that success justified treating people badly. Success doesn't make anyone superior, he said quietly. It just creates different responsibilities. Your technology innovations help millions of people. My protection work saves individual lives. Skylar's robotics might revolutionize accessibility for disabled communities. Different contributions equal value. They reached the gelato vendor, where Skylar explained molecular gastronomy principles while selecting flavors that changed color when exposed to air. Her enthusiasm was infectious, drawing smiles from strangers who probably understood a fraction of her technical explanations. She's remarkable, Arya said, accepting a cone that tasted like childhood memories and liquid starlight. She's my motivation for everything, Damon admitted. Every decision filters through one question. What serves Skylar best? Stable private contracts instead of overseas deployments. Neighborhood schools instead of expensive boarding programs. Community over isolation. The implicit contrast to Arya's choices was gentle but clear. She'd chosen isolation, competition, emotional distance. He'd chosen connection, sacrifice, vulnerability in service of something larger than himself. I don't know how to be part of something, she confessed. My whole adult life has been about individual achievement, staying ahead of competition, maintaining advantages over everyone else. I don't know how to care about someone else's success more than my own. It's practice, he said, his hand brushing hers as they walked. Small choices that prioritize connection over protection, like spending Saturday afternoon at a children's science fair instead of closing business deals. Is this working? She asked, vulnerability making her voice smaller than intended. This attempt at whatever this is? He stopped walking, turning to face her with the same intensity he'd shown during the restaurant attack, but softer now, more personal. You're here. You listened to my daughter explain robotics for an hour without checking your phone once. You asked questions that showed genuine interest, not performance. Skylar ran back to them, her face glowing with excitement. Miss Sinclair, can you help me debug a collision detection algorithm next week? I think your cybersecurity experience might solve a data processing problem I'm having. The request was professional, respectful, and completely genuine. This 8-year-old wanted to collaborate on a technical challenge, seeing Arya as a resource rather than a curiosity. The simple acceptance felt more valuable than any board appointment or industry award. I'd be honored, Arya said, meaning it completely. Walking back through the park, Skylar's hand found hers with the casual trust of childhood, while Damon's presence beside her felt like possibility rather than judgment. For the first time in years, Arya wasn't performing success or protecting vulnerability. She was simply being present with people who valued her contributions without requiring her dominance. 6 months later, Arya stood before her board of directors with a presentation that would have been unthinkable a year earlier. The quarterly profits chart showed steady growth, but her focus had shifted to metrics that couldn't be measured in stock prices. The Military Family Scholarship Initiative has funded full-ride STEM education for 47 children from service member families, she reported to the polished conference room. Our retention rates improved 12% after implementing mental health support programs. Employee satisfaction scores reached company highs when we expanded family leave policies. Board member Harrison Webb shifted uncomfortably in his Italian leather chair. These social programs are reducing quarterly dividends. Shareholders invest in sync tech for profits, not charity work. These programs are generating profits, Arya replied, her voice carrying new authority that had nothing to do with intimidation. Our veteran hiring initiative brought in talent with specialized skills we couldn't find elsewhere. Our family-friendly policies attracted top engineers from competitors. Our community partnerships opened markets we'd never accessed before. She clicked to the next slide, showing retention statistics that made several board members lean forward with interest. When you invest in people instead of exploiting them, they invest back. Revolutionary concept, apparently. The sarcasm was gentler now, more playful than cutting. She'd learned the difference between confidence and cruelty, between strength and superiority. The change hadn't been instant. Old patterns die hard, but each day brought choices that prioritized connection over control. After the meeting, she found Damon in her company's security consultation office, reviewing threat assessments with her corporate protection team. He'd been contracting with SyncTech for 3 months, bringing military-grade expertise to cybersecurity protocols that traditional firms couldn't match. How did the board take the scholarship expansion, he asked, looking up from satellite reconnaissance reports that would have impressed Pentagon analysts. Webb threatened to call for leadership review. Again. Arya settled into the chair beside him, noting how natural it felt to share professional challenges with someone who understood both business pressure and mission-critical decision-making. I reminded him that our stock price has increased 38% since implementing these programs. Nothing speaks to shareholders like increased valuation, he agreed, then shifted to tactical analysis that revealed the depth of his expertise. The Jakarta facility needs enhanced perimeter security before you visit next month. Intelligence suggests industrial espionage attempts targeting your AI research. Their professional relationship had evolved into mutual respect that transcended their personal connection. Arya's corporate resources amplified Damon's protective capabilities, while his strategic thinking enhanced her business operations. They discovered that their skills complemented rather than competed. Skylar's science fair is Thursday, Damon mentioned, organizing classified reports with the same careful attention he gave to his daughter's homework. She's presenting her accessibility robotics project to the district judges. The wheelchair navigation system? Arya's excitement was genuine, built through months of debugging sessions and late-night coding conversations. She solved the stair-climbing mechanism last week. That innovation could revolutionize mobility assistance. 3 evenings a week, Arya traded her corporate penthouse for Damon's modest home apartment, helping Skylar with advanced programming while learning to navigate family dinners that actually involved conversation rather than business networking. The 8-year-old had become her informal technology consultant, offering insights that occasionally surpassed her engineering team's solutions. Thursday evening found them in the school gymnasium, watching Skylar explain autonomous navigation principles to judges who struggled to comprehend the sophistication of her work. Other parents clustered around the display, asking technical questions that revealed her growing reputation in the robotics community. The ultrasonic sensors detect obstacles, but the real innovation is the predictive algorithm, Skylar explained to a NASA engineer who'd volunteered as a judge. Most systems react to barriers after detection. Mine calculates optimal pathways 3 moves ahead, like chess but with real-world physics. Arya found herself holding her breath during the judging, more nervous than she'd ever been during corporate presentations. This wasn't about her success. It was about someone she'd learned to care about more than quarterly profits. The revelation still surprised her. Putting someone else's achievements before her own didn't diminish her worth. It expanded it. When Skylar's name was announced for first place in the district competition, qualifying her for state finals, Arya cheered louder than anyone else in the gymnasium. Damon's proud smile caught her attention, and she realized this was what family felt like. Shared investment in each other's victories, mutual celebration of individual achievements. Later, over celebratory pizza at their neighborhood restaurant, Skylar discussed her college plans with the casual confidence of someone who'd never doubted her intellectual capabilities. MIT has the best robotics program, but Stanford's AI research might be more relevant to accessibility applications. You have 4 years to decide, Damon reminded her gently, but his expression showed pride in her ambitious thinking. Focus on middle school first. Actually, Arya said carefully, Recognizing the delicate territory of offering assistance, both schools have early admission programs for exceptional students. If you're interested, I could arrange meetings with department heads who specialize in robotics engineering. The offer was professional, respectful, free from the guilt-driven charity that had initially complicated their relationship. She'd learned to contribute without condescension, to help without creating obligation. "That would be great," Skylar said with enthusiasm, uncomplicated by adult pride or financial anxiety. "I want to understand their research methodologies before choosing undergraduate focus areas." Walking home through streets that had become familiar rather than foreign, Arya reflected on changes that went deeper than business practices or charitable initiatives. She discovered that vulnerability wasn't weakness, it was the foundation of genuine strength. That success meant building others up rather than climbing over them. That love multiplied when shared instead of diminishing when distributed. Her phone buzzed with after-hours business calls that she ignored without guilt. Tonight was about being present with people who mattered more than profit margins. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, corporate decisions, strategic planning. But she'd face them as someone who'd learned the difference between winning and worth, between achievement and fulfillment. The scared, angry woman who'd sat across from Damon 8 months ago would barely recognize the person she'd become. The transformation hadn't been dramatic, no single moment of revelation, just daily choices to prioritize connection over protection, growth over greed, love over loneliness. Change, she discovered, wasn't about becoming someone different. It was about becoming who you'd always been beneath the armor. 18 months later, Arya arrived at Jefferson Middle School clutching a homemade banner that read "Skylar Carter, Robotics Champion," in glittery letters that had taken 3 attempts to get right. Her corporate manicure was ruined from craft supplies, her designer blazer had glue stains, and she'd never been happier about looking imperfect. "Miss Arya?" Skylar's teammate Marcus waved from across the packed auditorium. "We saved you seats with the other parents." The other parents. The phrase still made her chest warm with belonging she'd never expected to feel. These were people who measured success in their children's achievements, who cheered just as loudly for participation certificates as championship trophies, who'd embraced her not because of her wealth, but despite it. She spotted Damon near the front, video camera ready, wearing the proud father expression that had become her favorite sight in the world. He'd taken personal leave from a high-stakes client consultation to be here, a choice that would have baffled the man she'd first met but made perfect sense for the father she'd come to love. "Ready to watch our daughter make history?" he asked, the word "our" still sending electricity through her system after all these months. Skylar had grown 3 inches and gained confidence that transformed her from brilliant child to formidable young woman. At 10, she was already fielding recruitment calls from specialized STEM programs, but more importantly, she'd learned to balance academic achievement with friendship, competition with collaboration, individual success with team support. "Welcome to the Regional Robotics Championship," the announcer's voice boomed across the auditorium. "Our first presenter is Skylar Carter with her project, Adaptive Navigation Systems for Accessibility Enhancement." Arya's heart hammered as Skylar took the stage with natural poise, her robot beside her like a technological companion. The project had evolved far beyond autonomous navigation. It now incorporated voice commands, predictive pathfinding, and user customization that could revolutionize assistive technology. "This system doesn't just avoid obstacles," Skylar explained to the panel of judges. "It learns user preferences, anticipates needs, and adapts to individual mobility requirements. The goal isn't just functionality, it's independence with dignity." The phrase "independence with dignity" was pure Skylar. Sophisticated thinking wrapped in compassionate purpose. Arya felt tears threatening her makeup as pride swelled beyond anything she'd experienced during her own professional achievements. After Skylar's inevitable victory, they celebrated at their neighborhood restaurant, the same place where they'd shared their first family dinner. The owner, Mrs. Chen, had prepared Skylar's favorite dumplings and refused payment despite Arya's attempts to contribute. "You bring good energy," Mrs. Chen insisted, as she had for months. Money cannot buy the joy your family brings to my restaurant. Later, in the apartment that had become more home than her Manhattan penthouse, they settled into evening routines that felt sacred in their ordinariness. Skylar spread homework across the coffee table, while Damon reviewed security briefings and Arya answered emails that couldn't wait until morning. The Peterson account needs additional threat assessment, Damon said, showing her intelligence reports on his laptop. Industrial espionage risk is elevated for the Dubai expansion. Their professional collaboration had evolved into seamless partnership. His expertise elevated her company's security capabilities, while her resources amplified his protective effectiveness. They'd discovered that respect, once earned, created possibilities neither had imagined alone. "Daddy, can you check my calculus homework?" Skylar asked, looking up from advanced mathematics that challenged most high school students. "I think I solved the optimization problem, but I want to verify my approach." Watching Damon guide their daughter through complex equations, his massive hands gentle on calculator keys while explaining concepts with patient clarity, Arya marveled at the depth of intelligence she'd almost dismissed. Elite tactical training, advanced mathematics, emotional wisdom, parenting excellence, this man contained multitudes she'd been too prejudiced to recognize. "Arya, what do you think about this algorithm?" Skylar asked, including her in the academic discussion with natural ease. Could it apply to cybersecurity pattern recognition? These moments, quiet, domestic, suffused with mutual respect, had become the foundation of happiness she hadn't known she was missing. No performance required, no dominance established, no walls maintained. Just three people who'd chosen to build something together. As bedtime approached, Skylar hugged them both with fierce affection that still surprised Arya with its unconditional acceptance. "I love you guys," she said simply, the words carrying weight that made corporate achievements feel trivial by comparison. Later, as they cleaned up homework materials and prepared for another day, Arya reflected on the transformation that had reshuffled her entire understanding of strength, success, and worth. The woman who'd mocked a security consultant for his simple life had discovered that complexity wasn't superior to clarity, that credentials meant less than character, that real power came from building others up rather than tearing them down. "Thank you," she told Damon as they settled into bed, his arm encircling her with protective gentleness that made her feel safer than any security system. "For what?" "For seeing who I could become instead of accepting who I was." His response was a kiss that tasted like forgiveness, possibility, and love that had grown beyond assumptions into something that would last lifetimes. True strength, they'd learned, wasn't about money or status. It was about character. About choosing vulnerability over invulnerability. Connection over control, growth over comfort. About looking beyond surfaces to discover the extraordinary people hidden beneath ordinary appearances. Some love stories begin with attraction. Theirs had begun with assumptions, evolved through crisis, and matured into something that proved the most powerful transformations happen when we finally see each other clearly. This story proves that real strength isn't about money or status, it's about character. If this opened your eyes about prejudice and assumptions, show some love with that like button. What assumptions have you made that you later regretted? Share in the comments. Let's learn from each other. And if you want more incredible stories of transformation and justice, hit subscribe and that notification bell, because we're just getting started on Untold Triumphs.